Good day. It's kind of technically my day off, so I'm out here on my kind of porch patio instead of my office where I'm typically surrounded by books. We wanted to make a quick video. We got Pentecost Sunday coming up in about a week, and I wanted to give out a word um, about the spread of early Christianity and its relationship to persecution. Now, normally people, when they think of the spread of early Christianity, the first 200-300 years of the church, first few hundred years, they think of the church growing up into, to the north and to the west, kind of into Europe, into the Roman Empire, and they think of Christians sort of being thrown to the lions at the Colosseum and all of that. And they think of Christians as just being constantly persecuted in the Roman Empire, but that's where Christianity really spread from Israel in the first couple of hundred years. It kind of went north and west into Greece and into Italy, into Europe, until finally Constantine converted, and Rome officially became, or Roman Empire officially became Christian. But that's just a very small part of the growth of the early church. But and of course we hear it because most of us and most of you watching the video are probably of European descent. But the church not only spread west, it spread south into Africa, it spread east into Asia, it spread north as well to Syria and to like the Ukraine, very early on, shockingly early on. Mark, the apostle guy who wrote the Gospel of Mark, he may have been in Egypt, into Africa, as early as the 40s. By the year 50, all within 20 years of Jesus' death, the gospel was spreading in Africa. There were reports of Christians being martyred in the middle of the second century, about 100 years after Jesus' death, all the way over in Western Africa. There are reports that of the apostles bringing the gospel as far into Asia as India. It was such a time when the Holy Spirit came on those in Pentecost. The political conditions were just right. God had done it all, lined it all up at just the right time. There was peace between Persia and China. This is where, if you think of where Israel is, everything to the west was sort of the Roman Empire. Everything to the east was really mostly the Persian Empire. And then China, they were at peace. There was an extensive road system. And Christianity grew as much east as it did west, and it grew down into Africa as well, far more than most people realized. And the idea that Christianity is a European thing would have been thought of as a ridiculous idea in the first 800 years of the church. It wasn't until the 7th century explosive growth of Islam and the armies of Islam going with the sword to force the conversion of so much of the Middle East and Central Asia and North Africa, that the idea that Christianity was a European thing, it would have been shy. Never would have been thought of. Your Western Europe was a backwater. The headquarters, the places where Christianity was really strong, the big churches, that was in Turkey, or that was in Syria, or different places in the Middle East and Central Asia. That was in Egypt and Alexandria. Yeah, Islam changed all that. I don't think we realize how significant, the marching armies of Islam, how much that completely turned the Christian world upside down. The big capitals and the strongholds for Christianity they were either destroyed and the Christians were killed, or they were subjugated to Islam and turned into second-class citizens, where they almost had to kind of pay a tax to their Islamic overlords. Fortunately, the armies of Europe were able to stop the spread of Islam, so they did not take over all of Europe. And over time, then, Europe became the stronghold of Christianity. But back to the original point, Christians were not persecuted continually throughout the Roman Empire. The first 300 years of Christianity in the Roman Empire only saw occasional waves of persecution. It was localized, like Nero's great persecution of Christians. That was just within the city of Rome. That was not necessarily spread throughout the whole Roman Empire. You'd see a couple years of persecution here, a couple years of persecution there. Most of the time, Christians were at peace in the Roman Empire. And in Persia, Christianity had a lot of peace until the third century. And particularly, and even in the third century, it was pretty minor. It wasn't until the Christian, or until the emperor of the Roman Empire became a Christian, that all of a sudden Christians in the Persian Empire to the east of Rome were suddenly looked on with a lot of suspicion. And then they were much more harshly persecuted. But they endured and they persevered that persecution, and they continued to do well and thrive, even though many were put to death. It wasn't until Islam arose, the armies of Islam came and really destroyed much of Christianity throughout Central Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, places that have been Christian strongholds. In the Middle East, though, even though Christian communities were subjugated and Christians were second-class citizens, they remained, and there were strong Christian minorities, even in Islamic lands, though they were subjugated and limited with rights, kind of until the British-American invasion of Iraq, where we kind of kicked out Saddam Hussein, and then ISIS came. And Saddam Hussein, he was a thug and a dictator and a terrible human being, but he didn't really persecute the church. He didn't really persecute Christians as such. But when he was disposed, it created a vacuum in which some much more radical Islamists came, and Christians in the Middle East, in that region, haven't done so well, and many of them have immigrated out. And there's probably fewer Christians today in many regions of Central Asia and the Middle East than there may have been 20 years ago. Okay, so a little bit of a history lesson. When we're thinking of Pentecost, remember the gospel did not just spread northwest. It spread it to the north, it spread it to the south, into Africa. It spread it east, far more than we tend to learn in our basic Sunday school classes of Christian history. By the end of the 2nd century into the 3rd century, Christianity was a global movement.